Hey everybody, Matt here with Angry American Dads, and of course I am joined by the one and the only big man, Gaetano. How we doing, brother?
What's going on, Matt?
Living the dream today. How about yourself?
Same here, man. Same here. End of the day, wrapping up. We're gonna vent a little bit for sure.
Yeah, definitely talk about some things. Couldn't do it yesterday because yesterday was, of course, Mother's Day, and that required spending time with mothers and our wives and showing a little appreciation. So today, I figure one of the things I want to delve into is education. I think watching what's going on in the world right now, it's one of those, and I am a very lucky dad to have an 18-year-old daughter that's a senior in high school, going to be
18.
going.
Wow.
Ooh, yeah, I know. Going to college soon, and it's something we've discussed at length. And with that being said, I'm looking at the school system. I'm looking at college right now, everything that's going on in the world. And I got thinking about it. And you and I have discussed this multiple times.
Several times.
And right now, for instance, you took the initiative, you and your wife, and you homeschool your kids currently.
Yes. Yep. 2 kids.
So I want to dive into all this. First thing I'm going to say right now, if you look around at the world, you have kids going on. Putting them in a public school right now scares the hell out of me.
Baseline scares the hell out of you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just happened at our local school. A individual desires to identify as an animal
You
of
got
all
furries?
things. Apparently, yeah.
You got furries, bro?
Yeah, apparently. And this individual is wearing slippers, which is against school policy due to safety reasons, all this other stuff. But another student decided to wear in slippers or whatever else in school and was threatened with detention, threatened with all this other stuff for not wanting to take them off. And I'm going, are you kidding me? Because their allowance for them, that's how it identifies. Holy crap.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we got a problem. We're not worried about math anymore. We're not worried about English anymore. We're not worried about building skill sets. We're not worried about teaching history, teaching government, teaching economics. We're not worried about any of that. We're worried about identity.
Yep. We're worrying about feelings. Yep.
And then you turn around and you look at the college scene, and
It
that's
don't get any better.
oh, they when they protest something. Okay, listen, you want to protest? That's great. That's awesome. But you talk to them and you want to get some information from them or whatever, and you expect, okay, this might be a history lesson. Maybe they can teach me something. They know nothing.
Nothing.
They just repeat a BS mantra over and over again until at nauseum. And then when they can't do that anymore, they just start screaming.
Yeah, the frustration boils up. It's like watching. It's like watching a computer freeze.
Oh, it's awful.
It's jammed up in there with facts. Yeah.
And then the other thing is, it's like they get these degrees that are absolutely useless.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And I can't wrap my head around it. But anyway, so those are some of the things that we see going on today. And we'll delve into the college thing here in a minute. I'm going to talk about some of the discussions we had between myself, my wife, my daughter.
Sure.
And I'm also going to include my son in this because he did not go to college. He's basically gone into the trades.
The trades, yep.
But first, I want to come back to you. And I'd like to chat about the fact. Can you go into the what you and your wife talked about, the reasons behind it, everything else, and why you think what you're doing is the best option right
Yeah, we had with the events of the last few years, we were introduced to it. So originally my kids, I went to private school when I was a kid. At that time back then, the private school had more money, so we had better stuff. It was assumed that we had the better teachers, the better tools. That's what we assumed. And again, everybody lives in their own little bubble. So that's what I assumed. It was a parochial school, so we did get a Christian background in there. So when I had my kids, that was the plan. We were going to do that. But what happened over the last 20 years, 20, 30 years, what I saw after putting my child into parochial school was that the money being spent in public school went up exponentially, and the money being attendance went down in the parochial school. We've talked about it before on podcasts with the degradation of the family unit, taking God out of the school. People don't Christian education, parochial education significant. And That's hurting the schools themselves. Like they're at least the ones around here. Down south, it's a little different.
Hmm.
So at the time, we made the decision that we're paying taxes and we're paying for the private school. I'm gonna take my daughter out, put her in the public school because I've met some decent teachers in there, and I thought she was going to get he was going to get the tools.
Hey,
And
brother, do me a favor. Try to adjust your mic. It's freaking. You're cutting out a little bit.
no,
There we go.
all right, cool. So we took them out of the parochial school, put them in the public school, hoping they get the best of both worlds. So then the events of the last few years, and I know we can't say it because it might be on YouTube, but they were sent home and they were had a hybrid environment. First they had all online, then they had a hybrid environment, and then they started sending packets of school home. And I actually got to see what they were being taught, how they were being taught, different ways, different things that they were sending home, and got to listen to my kids' opinions on a few things. And we ended up teaching them at home during that whole ordeal, and they seemed happier. And I found out through questioning my kids about certain things, morals, ethics, philosophy, that they had already been taught some things that didn't jive with our family values. They had questions about very high level adult subjects that I didn't appreciate. And through some of the meetings with the teachers, my daughter's like me, she was a little bored, and we dove into maybe we should just keep them home because we didn't know at that time when it was going to end. Nobody knew when it was going to end. So um, that started the research process, which was very enlightening. I talked to a lot of people that I know that were homeschooled all the way through, and they suggested several books. I think some of the people at Jits, Credence, she's got a homeschool co-op that we joined. She was very educational. She introduced me to a lot of resources on that. And one particular, for anybody listening thinking about homeschooling, John Taylor Gatto's book, Gatto. I'll put the link in the description, but his books are very enlightening as to how our current school system was created, what it was created for. And that was very enlightening to me as a father trying to do the best for my kids. What am I arming them with? Long story short, our current school system was built in the industrial age to produce people who could work in factories. Funny thing is, right now, we don't have a lot of factories. And we don't have a lot of need for that particular drone, if you want to, but we're still teaching that way. And you can see that if you sit in a classroom, the teacher, I give them all the credit in the world for actually taking on the job, but you can only go as fast as the slowest student in the class. That's just the nature of the current school system we have. So when you have other students who are progressing in different subjects faster than some of the other students are progressing slower, then you're leaving the top tier behind, and you're distracting those who need more individual guidance in the class, who maybe shouldn't be in that setting. And it's I'm not knock I'm I, w- we will knock the school system a little bit, but there's only so much you can do with the current way the schools are set up. You've got so many kids in a class that you've only got so many teachers, and those teachers are being given I don't believe it's an education that's conducive to actually being able to teach individuals.
I don't believe they're given much of an education at all. We ran into a lot of problems when it came to that with with both of them, but it was very much more apparent with our daughter as she got into 10th, 11th grade that these teachers they are not equipped.
No, I went to a teaching school. I did the North Country tour. I did all four schools up there at least a year, and one of them was a teaching school. I managed the most popular bar in the town that I went to school in, and I saw all the caliber of teachers. It's when you're lacking it, it's like anything else. When you're lacking in participation in a certain industry, the bar gets lowered.
Oh,
Okay,
100%.
and
100%.
and I God bless all. I'm not saying every teacher that I met is bad, but a lot of them are burnout, and I don't completely blame them. I blame the institution itself.
Hundred percent.
They're being giving standards to hit and being measured by standardized tests when that's not the way children learn. That's not. And if you read John Gatto's book and any other notable book on homeschooling, you'll see that not every child learns the same. But in the most of the high schools and grade
Yeah.
schools that we're privy to, they teach the same. Everybody's
Oh
got to
yeah.
use the same book. Everybody's got to use the
Yep.
same curriculum. So the beauty that I started to see in homeschooling is that if my son or daughter was taking a subject exceptionally well, we'd speed up. We just keep giving them more.
Hmm.
If they were lacking, we'd slow down, and we do that
Yep.
now. But a lot of questions. One of the big questions I had. Everybody talks about socialization. You'll get a kick out of this. Busky, right? All his kids were homeschooled, and I asked him about
Super intelligent kids, by the way, folks. Super intelligent,
crazy,
driven,
yeah,
hardworking,
great
awesome,
kids.
great people to talk to.
Great kids. And I asked him point blank, we were in a meeting, and he said, I asked him about socialization. What do I need to do? What do I need to be concerned about getting my kids? And if you look at some of the literature, that they've got to be socialized with children their age. He very point blank said, why do I want my kid around a bunch of other idiots the same age?
Leave it to Dave. I love that dude. It's awesome.
And that put it in perspective for me. One thing that is to me is critical and has been critical with my kids is there is a local co-op that we go to where other homeschool families get together with children of multiple ages, and we put them all in the same room. So not only are they learning to socialize with kids their own age, they're learning to socialize in the hierarchy of growing up with other children different ages. And you get to see the older kids teach the little kids, you get to see the little kids looking up to the older kids. And it's, I think, way back in the day, it used to be one classroom. They weren't these multi-classroom schools. It was one classroom. They were all in the same classroom. I think we've gotten away from some of the natural ways to teach kids, especially through play, through activity. Recess has gone down. Gym is not a huge requirement, and you make your way through that. And in my opinion, my businesses are in digital, right? So I deal with business needs every day. I serve other business owners, so I see what they need in terms of workforce. And I'm seeing that our current school system, public school system, was built for the industrial age. We don't have that anymore. Then we jumped into the information age and we produced a bunch of managers. Now we're going into AI. Okay, so we're going into the AI age where you're not going to need anybody from the industrial age and a lot of people from the information age. And our school system has not transitioned through those different phases, and it's leaving our kids behind. Case in point, you and I were both told go to college, get a good job, graduate,
Yeah.
retire.
Yeah.
I had no idea what the hell I wanted to do when I got out of
Yeah.
high school.
We wasted a lot of money on courses we didn't need that didn't do a damn thing for us. I know for a fact my degrees mean nothing.
Pretty much. And that's
They're pieces of paper on a wall.
I can remember my parents and my guidance counselor saying you got to pick what you want to go to college for. And I'm like, I don't know. But it was a relentless pursuit. That was the stigma. You had to apply, get accepted, all that. So I remember very distinctly going home and I had torn apart a computer and it was laid out on my desk just because I want to see what the hell was in it. And I just looked up who builds computers and the term mechanical engineer came up. And I said, okay, I guess I'm going to apply to this $40,000 a year school to become a mechanical engineer. That was how I made my decision. I'm sure my parents are going to listen to this, but yeah, that's how that decision came up. And at the time, the stigma was don't go to the local community college because it was the 13th grade, which was another stupid move on my part. I ended up going to college, doing my gen eds, failing miserably, and then realizing that physics and I just don't get along very well. In order to do mechanical engineering, you want to do physics. I don't think this goes back to what I was saying about the the current system is not conducive to the workforce we're going to need. And I think based on homeschooling my kids, you can get all those general education requirements done while they're home. They don't have to go to college to get those first 2 years. You can accelerate the programs. There's plenty of programs, plenty of curriculums. There's all kinds of learning tools online right now where you can have your children specialize in whatever they need to specialize in order to, if they need to go to college at all, which I think more than 50% of kids don't need to go to college.
I would agree with that.
And you can have, if you do need to go to college, and I told my kids, if you want to be a lawyer, doctor, engineer, anything that requires you to get an advanced degree to get a license to stamp that you're approving plans, medication, something that is going to require
Pharmacy, nursing,
all that.
PA.
And a
Yeah.
lot of that's got to do with liability. You want to
100%.
make sure that you've got a licensure that is ubiquitous to the entire profession, where you're not, if you screw up, you're going to be liable, but you have we all know you have the knowledge in order to make prescriptions, design drawings, things like that. But as far as having to go to school for 8 years, I think that's completely from my experience going to school for six, I think it's completely a waste of time. I do not agree with you need 2 years of general education requirements to broaden your horizons. I think it's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. You're putting kids in debt. And half the time, you're not going to figure out that you don't want that degree until 2 years after you're already 80 to $100,000 into a degree, which is basically what happened to me. I figured out I didn't like engineering, didn't want to do it basically because of the math, but I'm already 60 grand in debt at that time. I'm
Yeah.
like, I got to get out, get a job, or I got to completely switch majors, which is what I did. But I think, to your point, that's our homeschool journey. Is it easy? No, but I can honestly say I spent every possible waking moment with my children while they were that I was able to. And that's one thing that my father's often said to me that he regrets is that he should have spent more time with us when we were young. It's a blink of an eye. They're with you and then they're not with you. And being homeschooled and me working from home, I get to see them every day. I wake them up for the first classes of the day. My wife works with them, and then I work with them, and we go. But it does require you have to put in the time to spend with them, to be outside, to play with them, and it's all quality time. And I know sometimes that's hard for some. That's going to be hard for some families to do. But I see more and more, and I'll put some of the articles in the show notes that more and more people are taking the time to do that because it is the most important job you're ever going to have, in my opinion, is to be a father. And as a father, I told myself that I had to do everything I possibly could to make sure that both my children had every advantage that I could give them. And I have the ability to work from home. My wife is home. So we decided to homeschool. No, do they like it every day? No, they don't like it every day. They're kids.
Didn't like regular school every day. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. And and a lot of people think it's going to take one thing that we did run into is that a lot of people were looking at, we were getting done in a shorter amount of time than the kids were at school. And yeah, your kids are at school 6 hours, but you know what? They're not learning for more than one or two. The rest of it's bullshit. They're either at lunch, in the hallway, messing around in class. But if you think that your kid is 6 hours hard nose to the grindstone in school, you're nuts. It's just
It
not.
ain't China.
No. Right. But yeah, so that was our journey, and I totally agree with you. I don't think it's what the country needs right now is to put more kids in public school or send more kids to college. And we can get in some of the stats on and you going to the trades. I graduated. One of the kids I graduated with, he finally went on and graduated from Clarkson with a psychology degree. You and I have had
Oh
discussions about
boy.
psychology, right?
Yep.
He ended up working for his father's plumbing company and making. So he spent, I think it was like 80 grand to go to Clarkson, and ended up he couldn't get a job. He couldn't get a job with his psychology degree as a psychologist or whatever, and he ended up going to his dad's plumbing job, making all kinds of money. If you're a plumber on a rate government job, you're making over $100 an hour,
Yeah.
and there's
And the
no
thing is,
psychologist on the planet worth that.
and the thing is on the private side right now, plumbing, electrical, construction, especially if you're good with construction, right now the demand is still there because the pool of good plumbers, good electricians, good
Oh,
carpenters
yeah.
is small.
Very small.
And people are finally starting to figure out it's, hey, if I want this done, I'm willing to pay for it to get done. And what they're charging for rates right now is crazy. But guess
They're getting it.
what? That's it.
Yeah, you have two choices. You can either hire the manpower and pay the bill, or learn it yourself. And that's you and I are the latter. I'll go out and I'll YouTube the hell out of something and try and fix it myself. You grew up, your dad was in contracting and my dad was in construction. So our first job, I always tell people I was the first employee of my dad's construction company, whether I liked it or not. So I can turn a wrench, I can swing a hammer. We have that set of skills, and I think we need to bring shop back into high school or and introduce kids to getting. My kids love it, my nephews love it. Just getting to work with your hands. Not only I think is going to get you a better living and where you can write your own ticket, but it's also very cathartic. Like our last episode, the physical exertion of hard work that can be very cathartic and very rewarding because there's actually something you built at the end of the day versus
Mhm.
working in HR trying hiring and firing all day.
Yep. No, I get that. My line of work, it's one of those that the numbers have days, weeks, months, years that I've gone to work and I've done the same thing every day in and day out. And at the end of it, I'm sitting there going, what do I have to show for other than like a number on a piece of paper? And that is so demoralizing. And also, the other one thing I'd like to point out is that you look today and, for instance, with our kids, it's one thing. We always harped on certain things at the house. And I say harp because that's what I do. I harp. It's you got to know how to do things like, I know people don't use checkbooks anymore, but you have to be able to balance your accounts. You have to be able to look at that kind of stuff and know what's
Yeah,
going on with it. You have to understand, hey, this is how insurance works. If you get insurance through work or everything else, this is how this works. This is how you take care of it. This is how you use it. This is what you have to do for the maintenance of your vehicles. This is how you keep insurance on your vehicles. This is car payments. This is life shit that happens.
yeah. You used to call that home ec, right?
Yeah, and now
Yeah,
that's gone. Like
yeah,
most kids today can't cook a basic meal for themselves if they needed to. They couldn't go to the grocery store and budget and pick up decent food and know how to freaking do all that and say,
sure.
"Hey, listen, I know I got to eat for a week off of this shopping trip." They can't do it. They can't do basic stuff. And we've always tried to make sure that ours would knew how to do that, but they weren't learning at school.
No, no, they weren't. And on that note, when you're at school, you're at the mercy of the individual teaching the class. Like they're when the little, especially the little kids, they're going to pick up the attitudes and the habits of the teacher as well. And fortunately, there was quite a few that my kids had, but towards when we pulled them out, there was a couple of teachers that, and I was thinking about this before we got on, is the majority of the teachers that I know are great people, and I give them a lot of credit for doing what they do. But it only takes one or two to ruin the batch, right? So this
100%.
particular teacher, and I'll harp on this all day. I am not for emotional, um, what emotional security pets or emotional. What do they call those pets? Emotional support animals. Okay, so the emotional support animal. This particular teacher required an emotional support dog in the classroom to help her cope with her life while she was teaching my kids. And to me, that was a disqualification immediately. No matter what you got going on in your life, if I'm going to put you in charge of handling and put my kid's life in your hands, and you can't do it without bringing in your pet, I have a problem with that. And some people think that's insensitive. Some people may think that's cruel. Unfortunately, to me, that's teaching my child that the only way that I can handle my life is with a pet. Now, I understand that helps certain people, but there are certain responsibilities that you have, and as an adult, especially if you're a teacher, that you need to suck it up. And if you've got issues that you need an animal in the classroom, you need to handle that before you come to school.
God forbid they have a serious incident or something like that, and the teacher has a freaking meltdown.
And that's and there were several. My daughter was telling me there were several times that the teacher would break down in class into tears. And when you do that in front of young impressionable children, they have no idea what the hell the problem is. They don't know whether they did it. They don't know whether it was something somebody else did. But this is the type of things that started to come out from when my kids were in public school. And again, I'm not talking about the whole school, the whole teaching staff at the school. I'm talking about this particular individual. And the problem is, and I just heard about it the other day, somebody locally had sued the school in order to bring their emotional support animal in, and it was struck down because I think maybe people are coming to their senses where they understand that it takes a certain caliber individuals to teach young children, and that individual needs some intestinal fortitude and moral character to be in that classroom. Oh, it was Curtis. Curtis was telling me the other day. We got a good friend of ours that's subbing now in a public school, and he had mentioned that locally somebody had tried to get a job teaching with an emotional support animal, and it was struck down because that, that you and I talked about it this weekend when we were hunting. The things that you and I were taught to be obvious that you didn't have to explain, we no longer have that luxury. We have to explain it. We have to be able to argue it. We have to be able to tell people this is why we think this way, so that the obvious becomes obvious again.
Mm-hmm.
You follow
Yeah,
what I'm
no,
saying?
it's pretty sad. It used to be called common sense, and that's, I can say this much on my end, dealing with in my line of work, I've dealt with 10 different schools. Okay, that's 4 different districts. Okay, no, technically 5 different districts. correction on that. In 11 schools, actually. But the other thing that I noticed a lot and has always sent me off, and now I'm not going to the schools myself because how my job works, but my daughter will take videos from a school, and that's where I graduated from. And the deterioration in the level of discipline, the level of punishment is just seriously catastrophic. You watch some of these children, the way they act, how they treat teachers, staff,
Yeah.
everything else. They're allowed to hit, allowed to strike, bite, kick, do all this other stuff. Law
Yeah.
enforcement getting called in all the time to basically discipline or hand raise these kids because the parents don't and the teachers don't. And I and it didn't happen when I was in school, nothing blatant. I think back to listening to stories about my dad telling me because he went to the same school as we did, and two kids would start a fight in school. Principal would come out, grab both, and go, "Come on, freaking drag them out back, dude. You want to fight? You're gonna fight out back."
Yep.
And they'd fight. One get knocked down, but get back up, keep going. And it was pushed through because guess what? Here's the deal: you got to figure this shit out.
Yeah.
But here's the deal: we're not going to interrupt the school day. We're not going to freaking keep that stuff going on. We're going to fix this, and once it's done, you're both going to get a punishment out of the deal. But here's the deal: it's over.
Yeah.
And it was like the number of times that my father told me a couple stories like that, and he goes, once that would happen every once in a while, he says you wouldn't see another fight for a long ass time. There might be two or three a year, and that was it because nobody wanted to have these issues.
Right.
Because if you got snotty with the principal, he'd knock you. And it
Hey
was
man, I went to Catholic school, man. We had the Board of Education was a big
yeah.
old wood 2x4 sitting in the principal's office.
But it's no, that's the thing. It's completely lacking. And then people wonder why they get to college and they feel the need to attack other people for having a different viewpoint.
Yeah.
This is bullshit. The whole thing is. I know my wife and I talked about the possibility of homeschooling our daughter at the time when everything was going on and she was learning from home and then hybrid and all that other happy crap. And we ended up changing schools for a little while due to the fact we had a house fire. And it was one of those that our daughter would come back to the apartment and explain some of the stuff she was seeing at this school, which was more progressive than the school that she had been going to. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, holy crap, they allow this stuff. It's the mental health issues are just running rampant and they're being encouraged and almost forced on the kids.
Yeah.
And like I said, so we had talked about it. We made our decision not to. There was a lot that went into it.
Yeah. You guys. Yeah.
But it's one of those that I look at it now and I sit there and I say, if I had young kids now closer to your children's age, I would find a way to homeschool them or something along that line because I look at it now and it just totally blows my mind. These, and to a point that you made earlier about the teachers trying to work, they got what they can work with and that's about it. The thing that gets me is some of these teachers are coming out of college and literally the only thing they got out of college was this is what you're going to teach.
Right.
This is it. This is the only thing to it. And this is what you're going to get. We had a whole project my daughter got in history class. She almost got a failing grade on it. And we're sitting there, what the heck's going on? So I ended up pulling a bunch of books from my little library
Yep.
because I love history. I'm always pulling books. I always buy books, all that stuff. So I took a whole bunch, and that's where she got a lot of her info from. We went in, we chatted with the teacher, and the teacher was like, I didn't even know this stuff happened.
And it's
What? You're a freaking history teacher. How the hell do you not know this? And not only not know it, but when the child presents this stuff and she has everything listed and referenced and everything else, instead of going and looking for the references, just marks as wrong because it's not what she learned.
yeah, because the answer key that she was going by didn't have that.
Yeah, and that's bullshit. That's bullshit. We went from 100 years ago, we taught Latin and Greek in school
Yeah.
to now we can't even pass basic English or arithmetic.
And we're teaching certain styles of arithmetic that nobody's using. Isn't conditioned.
Yes,
Yeah. You know.
it's
So
BS.
and that was part of our journey as well, is trying to figure out, okay, we're bringing them home. What do we do now? So you, as a homeschooler, you go through what curriculum, what are you trying to teach? So To me, that brought it back to me as a father, head of household. What are we doing? What am I trying to prepare my kids for? And that's, at the time, I was still hiring people for my own business, and I was like, okay, what are they lacking that I'm not going to hire them, that I need to make sure my kids have, so that they can, if they decide not to go into business for themselves, they need to have these certain traits. So one of the big things that we found was critical thinking.
Oh,
It's, do not see anything that's being taught in the school. And like I said, I live in a little small corner of New York State, but from talking to other homeschool families, it's not just New York. The school system is not teaching critical thinking, conscientious work, just working and working right and doing the right thing just because it is the right thing,
mhm.
having some integrity in your work. Creative thinking is not drawing a pretty picture. That's not
Yeah.
what we're talking about. A lot
Nope.
of people that I've talked to are equate, well, creative thinking, that means they've got art class or they got music class, and
No.
that helps, but it's creative problem solving.
Yeah,
uh,
when you've got a problem right here that's got to be taken apart, you don't. You it requires a special tool. You don't have it. Tools you have. How do you get that off there?
that's it. And then the other one is collaboration. I think school is the only place where you're not able to talk to your neighbor and come up with a good solution. They call that
Mhm.
cheating. Well, that one from Robert Kiyosaki, but he's 100% correct. In the marketplace, you're not alone. The only place, and you correct me if I'm wrong, the only place where I see collab- collaborating is as punishable in the marketplace is being a government employee, because you guys have a ladder that you're trying to
Oh yeah,
you're
yeah,
trying to
yeah,
step on people to get to.
yep, 100%. I will agree with you 100% on that. Yes. Yep.
So it seems interesting that the only job that you can excel at being alone and cutthroat is government work.
Yeah, yeah. You get tied in with the government. That if you can do that, you're going to rise through the ranks pretty damn quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's,
It's no, it's I like listening to you talk about that, and it's funny because we went through a lot of the same kind of conversation before, and we did it again when it came up with our daughter with going to college because she wants to go nursing. She wants to get into nursing, and she's debating on whether or not later in
yeah,
life to get into nurse practitioner or PA. That is going to require licensing. That is going to require college. We understand that.
yeah,
So then you got to start looking at, and when it comes to, I'll reference back, when it comes to the critical thinking, when it comes to creative problem solving, when it comes to work ethic and everything else, that is one thing I think I can pretty confidently say for the most part. She is 18, she is
sure.
still a teenager. For the most part, I think my wife and I have done a
She's a
pretty
worker.
damn good job. She
Hell
works
yeah,
hard, she works on a farm. You ask for help, you get it.
yeah,
She can think about things. We started at a very early age where it's like, hey, something comes up, and yeah, trust me, I'm guilty of it. You deal with some of these problems. That's when, especially like me and mechanics, it's I start working on a vehicle and I'll hit a problem, man, I get pissed, and it's not a good thing. But it's she's already started to learn, hey, take a step back, cut the feelings out of it. What is the actual problem?
yep, yep.
How do I fix this?
Disconnect. Yep.
And the critical thinking part, she's impressed me a few times, and if she can keep that going, we're doing good. And it's one of those where she even was applying critical thinking when um, her and my wife decided to start looking at schools. I did not go to a lot of them the first time. I said, if you find a good one, we'll go up for a second visit. I'll go up then and we'll figure out what we're doing.
Yeah,
And they looked at a bunch of these bigger schools, Lemoyne. I'm trying to, there was another couple of SUNY schools in there. I don't know which one it was, but she looked at a bunch of them. She's like, yeah,
no,
these aren't what I want. And I'm like, well, thank you, Lord. Thank you. Thank you. And then she found a school. It's up in the Adirondacks. It's a very small school, specializes in medical.
sure.
And I'm looking at that and I'm like, okay, that's much better. And here's a girl that's figuring this out on her own from the teachings with mom and dad, with a little chiming in from grandma and grandpa on
Yeah,
one side and Beamy and Papa on the other, which is a great thing. And she's looking at it very pragmatically and very freaking with a very common sense approach of what is going to be the best for me to get me what I need in the shortest amount of time
sure.
with the least amount of money. Now, mind you, yes, she's got to get a lot of BS courses out of the way the first 2 years. So, yes, she's going to go to a local community college, but she's already started taking some of those classes her senior year in high school.
Yeah,
So she's knocking out, I think, either 3 to 5 classes in there that she's not going to have to take.
yeah.
So that's the majority of a semester. That's a great
Hmm.
thing. we're looking at that, but even with that, I am petrified. I am petrified.
Well, that. I was one of those kids. I my church every Sunday. 12 years. 12 years at Catholic school. I went to college, and everything that I thought was my whole worldview changed because everything my parents taught me that wasn't out there was there when it
Yep.
hit me in the face. And I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. She's going
Yeah.
to be exposed to things that that
And
she's
it's
going to have to
different though
deal
than when you
with
and
your
I went to
teacher.
college.
Oh, absolutely. It's way
I
worse.
mean,
It's way
it,
worse.
and here's the thing, and some people might disagree with this, which I completely understand. In law enforcement, you deal with a lot of crazy stuff. I've dealt with some really nasty car accidents,
Yeah.
DWIs, freaking bad situations with people getting hurt, all kinds of situations. And there's times where not involving the people that were in them, but if I could show like bad accidents, DWI accidents, stuff like that. I remember one in particular was two cars head on, high speed. It was a fatal, and there's nothing gory in it. Didn't violate anybody's rights or anything like that. I took a picture in one of the vehicles. I remember showing it to my daughter at a very young age, and let's say 11 or 12. And I was like, "Oh my God, how could you do that?" Listen, you need to start a lot of this stuff early. We don't
Yes.
expose. Everybody feels like, oh, we can't expose your kids to this. You can't expose your kids to that. Blah blah blah. And
Well,
that's why we end up with a whole bunch of them parading around on a freaking
snowflakes.
schoolyard, talking about something they have no frigging clue about,
Yeah.
making asses out of themselves, earning a degree that's going to get them absolutely nowhere. And then when they get out in it, they're the ones posting TikToks and everything else on Instagram and bullshit on Instagram going, I can't make ends meet because I don't have a managerial job because that's what I went to school for and I should be hired as a manager.
Yeah.
No, you shouldn't.
Nope.
You haven't earned shit. You don't know your ass from a hole in the ground.
And that's and that anybody who's worked in the trades understands that. Like you get your certificate from BOCES and then you go start working on the job with guys who've been there for a while. You have zero respect, man. You don't know nothing.
Yeah, you got
You
to
need
earn
that
it.
experience. Yep.
Same thing in the
You
military,
got to
same
earn it
thing in law enforcement. It's like when you come in, you start, you are at,
at the bottom.
you eat dirt. And the thing, you earn your way up through. But once you do that, you find out very quickly that it's like that respect that's earned is worth a whole hell of a lot more than any
Sure.
freaking piece of paper.
Sure. And that's
Um,
and that brings me to another point is I see in children a lack of wanting to learn, right?
oh,
You know,
100%.
so and I
It
know it's
gets
always been
driven out of them.
right. And
Or,
medicated out of them in some of the public schools, a lot of public schools, failure is punished, but drive and what should really happen is you should reward them for continuing to try. It's not
mm-hmm,
so much about did you get the end product 100% right, is did you keep trying until you got it right. And
mm-hmm,
I don't see that trait being instilled. So that's another thing that we try to do at home is that I want to see the effort. I'm going to reward the
mm-hmm,
effort. I'm going to praise the effort, because the effort is what's going to get you to that final destination, the effort through all the crap. And if you're going to do anything after school, after high school, going to the trades, going into college, it's going to take effort, and you're going to have to deal with some hard issues. So you want to make sure that you have that trait, that you've instilled that trait in your kids.
yeah, 100%, 100%. You got to have that. And they all, and with that, they also have to understand that it's like there's a lot of times where you're working for something and you may not reach your end goal, and but you
It's
still
not
got to get
guaranteed.
it done.
Yep.
You still got to work through it. And the school system is just, it's a conundrum in itself that is just, it's exponentially getting worse every year.
Sure.
I
Sure.
don't know how to describe it. I remember being in high school and I'm looking at it now and I'm going, holy cow, it is 10, 12 times worse than what it was when I was there. And all the issues we went through with our son at school and everything else. And it's one of those that it scares the hell out of me. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, if I'm ever a grandfather with this deal, and it's one of those that the school system hasn't gotten any better, I'll homeschool my grandkids. I won't even care. I'll just to keep them out of that.
Yeah. We can hammer the schools all the time. We can hammer the schools, but I think we need to present people, whoever's listening, with some options and alternatives. If you can't homeschool, I would say that there's plenty of groups online. And this is just my personal opinion that you need to teach your kids either to code or to use AI Those things aren't going away. I've had several people ask me because of my ability to stay at home and homeschool my kids. I would advise my kids, and I do advise my kids, you're either going to go into the trades, which I've got my son, he's pretty handy. He likes to work with his hands. My daughter, she's more headsy. She likes to
Mhm.
be creative. But I'm telling everybody, if you're listening, within the next 2 to 5 years, 90% of the bullshit jobs like data entry, answering phones, taking orders, anything that can feasibly be replaced by AI, either voice, chat, or both, it will be replaced. And right
Mhm.
now, that's 90% of your managerial jobs. And we're not
Mhm.
talking just one AI. We're talking stringing two, three, four AIs together and
Mhm.
replacing an entire company department.
Mhm.
That's happening now. That's part of what I do on a daily basis. If you're listening to this, have your kids get out of that old mindset, and you need to learn as well. You need to learn what is needed by entrepreneurs, other business owners, and direct your kids into that, point your kids in that direction. And I'll put some more information in the show notes, but I can't emphasize that enough. We went from industrial to information. Now we're in AI. And if you don't jump on the AI bandwagon and point your kids into trades and we'll just take this for example, right? So the trades and AI will be together. We're already
Mhm.
designing programs where I'm working on an HVAC unit right now. You've seen it. I got to pull off the cover. I got to peel off the instruction manual and troubleshoot based on the lights that are flickering in the control board in the HVAC unit, right? So now I'm going to have an AI helper on my phone where I'm going to tell it what the model number of that HVAC unit is, how many beeps I'm seeing, and it's going to tell me step by step what to troubleshoot. Right now, you have to call support. If you've never dealt with that HVAC unit
Mhm.
before, you have to call support, talk to a human, try to figure it out. It takes ridiculous amount of time, costs the consumer money. So
Mhm.
AI is going to start there. Then if you put a wireless controller into that HVAC unit, it's already going to tell the AI what the problem is. The only thing you got to do is take the list. The tech will take the list and fix that HVAC unit, and didn't even need to talk to anybody.
Mhm.
Your HVAC company was alerted, the tech was sent out, fixed it on the spot. That's what's coming. And just in that sequence of what I just said, the printing of the instruction manual and taping it to to the inside, that was eliminated. The call center that took the support call was eliminated. The secretary that wired the HVAC tech through to the support call was eliminated. We
Mhm.
eliminated 5, 6 jobs just right there with one AI bot. Span that to mechanics, electrical, plumbing,
Mhm.
everything. It's coming. Point your kids in the right direction.
Mhm.
I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah, I'm going to take the other side of that spectrum, and I'm a big one for the trades deal where it's like start teaching your kids hands-on skills.
Yep.
And while you're doing it, if you don't know that skill yourself, start learning it yourself. Because one way to really influence your kids is to learn with them. Get out there and do stuff
Amen.
with them.
Amen.
And if you're doing that, when you're getting great quality time, you're going to build a relationship I can look back on some of the things my father and I did. And to this day, those are some of the best memories that I have. And it was a huge part of my life. Then on top of it, it's one, you're expanding your knowledge base, your kids are expanding theirs, your family time, everything else. This will contribute to a much better relationship farther down the line. It will help build their critical thinking. It'll help build all these different skill sets. Everything we've talked about before. And it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's the perfect storm for a good outcome. So it's one of those that if you can do this, it's a win. So how do you look at that and not see it as a good thing? Even simple things. Take the time to teach your kids how to change a freaking tire. Teach your kids how to learn how and learn. Teach your kids how to wire an outlet properly. Simple stuff. Change the oil on something. Change the oil on a freaking like we got a little rototiller. Change the oil on that. Be able to
Yeah.
take the blades all on and off it and clean it. Do all these different things. It's not. I know that it seems so simple, but it's that simple stuff that leads to bigger and more complex things that lead to better stuff down the line.
That and you're introducing your kids to things that they didn't know about before. So I've had this discussion with a friend of mine about, do you make your children do things that they don't want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And his answer was, no, I really don't, because I don't want to stress them. So my feeling on that is they don't know what they don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Most children, especially even mine, if I ask them, you want to try this? They'll say no automatically because it's something that they don't know. So we
It's
don't
uncomfortable.
ask. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. So we don't ask anymore. I will we will try it. We will do difficult things. And I tell you and I've talked about this. We do difficult things so we have easy lives, right?
Hmm.
So we'll try those difficult things. And after trying them at least a couple times, if you still don't like it, then we won't do it anymore.
Hmm.
But the first, but we are not allowed, and but that applies to us too. Like my wife and
Hmm.
I, we will get called out by our kids when we say we don't like something. My son will pop up. Did you ever try it, Dad? Hey,
Man,
have
that
you
was
ever
funny.
tried it? Yeah, yeah. So we'll get called out, and we'll try. That has led to so many really cool experiences with my entire family because we will force ourselves to try new things
Hmm.
because we really don't know. You don't know what you're missing until you actually try it. So I
And
would
everybody starts to find out cool stuff about themselves while they're doing it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The scary stuff, we have a rule in the house about food. If it's something new, we all got to try it at least once, and we all look at each other's faces when it's absolutely horrible. Those are the family moments that you get to create. And that's one thing I had to learn with homeschool is just what you hit on the head is there's stuff that I want to teach my kids that I don't know,
Yeah.
like the books on orienteering that and mountaineering that you just pointed me at. That's something I didn't have the privilege of going in the army, so I don't know. I can read a map, but I don't know how to use a compass and grid and all that. That's going to be part of our science curriculum is learning how to read maps and use maps. And what I didn't realize going into homeschool is that you and I are used to a set curriculum in a school, but as a
Mhm.
homeschooler, you can broaden that out. One program that we use is the Ron Paul curriculum, and it's very Socratic. It's learning literature through reading
Mhm.
good literature, learning how to put a thought together.
Yep.
Their science curriculum, it's not earth science and physics. It's okay, we're going to build a robot.
Mhm.
Here's the list of Amazon parts that you're going to need, and we're going to solder together a clock, things like that. That's all science. And if you do that with your kids, I promise you, you'll have memories that will last a lifetime, and they're memories that a lot of people won't have because unfortunately our culture is centered around mom and dad going to work, kids going to school, and it's just a separation that starts that I really didn't realize it starts pretty young. And
Yeah, it does.
why would I want the majority of my kids' life to be apart from me? At the time, I didn't realize that that was so important, but I do now, and we're here every day, and I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it. Now the kids,
Yeah.
on the other hand, seeing every day, Dad, and I'm like, you just got 5, 6 years, then you can do whatever the hell you want. Right now, you're mine.
Yeah. And they'll run away for a little while and then they'll come back and
Sure.
be happy for it. That's the one thing that I can definitely vouch for is the fact that it's like you look at all the kids I went to school with and the ones that had parents that did stuff like what we are talking about, what we've described. Maybe the kids, like in my case, I went to school, yep, did that, but there was always something going on.
Yep.
Work, playtime, fishing, different stuff like that with my dad, shooting, being outside with my mom, working on the farm with my mom, working in the garden, doing all kinds of stuff, going out on the lake, everything else. And yeah, there was a time I took off. I ran away, did my own thing for a while, but at the same time, for freak's sake, we live next door to them. We built a house right next door to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you realize very quickly that the close family you have, that's something that is irreplaceable. And the realization came to me because I also spent a lot of time, I was very lucky with my grandparents, and they had been through the tail end of the Great Depression, everything like that. So talking to them and looking at how they lived, the skill sets they had, everything else. My one grandfather was a college professor. He taught drawing design at the community college. He built hundreds of houses from the foundation up. The man could do anything with hand tools. He was phenomenal. And so he'd literally do a house from start to finish, draw the plans and do it. And he taught a lot to my father. And the thing that got me is I remember he'd already passed away, but I was sitting there one day and I found one of his books. And I remember sitting there and I'm flipping through the book and you can see where he had markers in, he had bookmarks in where he had notes written on them, index
Yeah.
cards. And I'm sitting there and I'm reading his handwriting as best I could. He had atrocious handwriting when he was in a hurry. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, all the knowledge that man had in his head, all the skills he had that he could use, send to his hands and make work, they're gone.
Yeah.
They're gone. Now, with that being said, can I ever get all the knowledge that's in my father and mother's head? No. Can my kids get all of it? No. But the more they can get in the time that they're here,
Sure.
that is way more important than anything else.
Yeah.
And That again, I'm going to go back. That's education. That's a huge education, and that plays a big part in later in life, as far as I'm concerned, too. And that's I would rank that almost even more important than the classical education that we're getting right now.
Sure. The experiential education of our elders, for sure.
Um, and that is dying and going away. And I see it all the time because I watch these families. They'll pass away, and the kids can't. Something would happen where they've got health issues. They pass away at home. We show up because it's a what we call an unattended, and we show up and we reach out to the kids. They have power of attorney. They have all this other stuff. But they live 2 states away,
Yeah.
and you're talking to them, and they don't know anything about their parents.
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate.
Huh? Okay, that's not good. And it's just this is how that's to me that's the prime example of how education ties into all the other stuff we've talked about, the
Sure.
shorts we talk about. It's this is all one big freaking web that people have to understand that it doesn't take a huge. You don't have to move mountains to do it. It's little incremental steps day by day.
Starting at home, because that's where the cause is. If you have a strong family unit, if you have a strong marriage, a man and woman, strong marriage with kids, the chances of you having some of the issues that we're seeing are exponentially lower. There's all kinds of
100%.
stats on that. And it's like you said, it's going to take a generational change. It took 30, 40 years to ruin it.
Hmm.
It's going to take 20, 30, 40 years to bring it back, but it has to start with fathers. So that I think that's where you and I, and this is why we're doing what we're doing, is I was able to go in one direction and turn around and come back to my senses here and
Hmm.
try to restructure the family life so that my kids don't have it as hard as hard and difficult as we have it now, trying to bring back common sense
Yeah,
and defend it.
I
That's the key.
yeah, 100%. And I think they're going to be way better off than their peers.
I think so too.
Um,
Well, you and I've said it. Dana White said it best, right? If you could be just even a little bit savage now, you could pretty much get whatever you want.
oh yeah, dude, you can freaking crush anybody. And the thing that gets me, it's I look and I'm going to reference this. The one thing that I said this to you before, it's funny. And the other day when I stopped by your house before we went up to camp, I sat there and I almost caught myself saying that. I was like, man, some of your daughter freaking impressed me. And I wanted to make that stupid statement. It pisses me off, but it almost came out of my mouth. They're so mature. No, no, time out. And no, please don't take offense because people say this all the time about our kids, especially Ashley. Like, oh wow, she's so mature. No, she's not. She's she right now acts her maturity level.
Yes,
She's 18 years
yes,
old. She acts like an 18-year-old should
should
act.
act.
People should act. The rest of them out there, they don't act that way.
No, they
So
don't
yes,
act
they
that way.
are immature.
Yep.
And that's what they're gauging it off of. And I'm going, oh my God. And I almost caught myself doing it. And I'm like, I'm such an idiot.
And man, you hit it right on the head. There's so many times I watched my son at the age of 8 have a 20-minute conversation with an 84-year-old woman, like
Oh
a
yeah.
coherent
Hmm.
conversation where he was presenting ideas, defending ideas, teaching her. And what it turned out was she was an ex school teacher, and he walked away and went to play. And she looked at me and she goes, I don't think I've had a coherent conversation with thoughts and ideas like that with somebody that young in a very long time. You guys, whatever you guys are doing, keep doing it. And I was like, that is socialization. Putting
That's
your
the good
children
stuff.
putting your children around older people and them learning how to have a conversation, listen and present ideas in a coherent manner as early as humanly possible.
100%.
I think will benefit them immensely. My daughter, she was with me when we were renting the townhouses. She would be there. She at 3 years old, she's walking around during the sales presentation, and she's very outgoing. She could pretty much talk to anybody now. I don't know if I'd advise everybody, yeah, take your kid on the sales presentation, no problem. But that's what I'm talking about. Put them in different environments. Let them see how you handle that environment. She was at one of the mortgage closings we had, just sitting in the corner, watching Papa and I sign our lives away. That I involve them. That's one thing. When you're a homeschooler, take them everywhere. Whenever I go out, my kids come with me. And I know some people say my kids won't act right. Take care of that. They want to go with you. Get them off the iPhones. Get them off the iPads. They want to spend time with you.
Start teaching some discipline early.
Start
Doesn't
teaching them
take
young.
much.
Yeah.
And one thing I'm going to say to go along with that point right there is we keep making this mistake of this statement of you got to let kids be kids. Yeah, there's a time and a place for that.
Yep.
The rest of the time, you know what we're doing? We're trying to teach them to be the best adults that they can grow into be. That's it. We're trying to make them so when they grow up, when they do reach adulthood, they can be the best adults that they can be.
That's all we're trying to do.
So that starts at a young age. So you can't sit there all the time and just let your kids be kids. It doesn't work that way. Because if you do, again, we go back to you wind up with a whole bunch of entitled little brats that are 20 something year old and they don't know their ass from a hole in the ground and they are freaking useless. They can't do anything.
So, to your point, we've seen the results of that experiment, and
Yeah, and it's
it
not
is an
good.
abject failure.
Yeah.
Letting kids be kids, not challenging them, not instilling them work ethic. That's what we have. We have pro Hamas. That's what we have.
Yep. No discipline, no structure, no nothing.
Yeah,
It drives me nuts. And then you see the other side of it where you'll get some of the good ones that make it through the schools and do all this stuff that they made it through in spite of what everything else going on around them. And it's like some of those are coming into my line of work right now and I'm looking at them and I feel bad for them because they don't know how to handle basic stuff, basic confrontation, basic issues. And I'm sitting here and I'm looking at someone. I'm like, you understand? I could bring my 18-year-old daughter in here and she would figure this out.
she can handle it. Yeah.
And this would never would have come up because she would have already dealt with it. And these are mid 20-year-old kids, and it's sad. I'm having to play dad with them,
On the
and I'm
job,
going,
which
yeah,
is freaking
100%.
scary.
And oh yeah, it's very scary. It's very scary, but it is what it is. So anyway, I think I'm going to put this out there. I think one, thank you for going through everything in regards to your kids and homeschooling, dude. That was great.
Yeah. I think I'm going to do quite a few shorts on maybe get a little bit more granular if people want to hear
Yeah,
a journey
I think
because
you
there's
should.
so many different way journeys that we could probably do a whole nother podcast. But yeah, I do have to thank my parents for, especially my father for, we had this conversation the other day that he was always harping on me to do the hard stuff with enthusiasm. And I let him know, I was like, I finally understand what you mean. I haven't quite got the enthusiasm part down, but I'm doing it at this, I'm doing the stuff I don't want to do at the speed as if I wanted to do it, but
Yeah.
not with a smile on my face. I'm still
Oh
working
yeah.
on that. So now I'm trying to instill that into my kids. Well, yeah, I understand you don't want to do it, but you still have to do it. You don't have to be, don't smile while you do, but freaking do it as fast as if you wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah,
100%,
yep,
dude. That's awesome.
yeah,
So, but one, thank you for that. Two, I think we have managed to provide a couple different experiences here. And at the same time, hopefully, we've given dads, moms a series of information, a series of things to think about, mull over in your own head, because there's no way in hell that we can answer the questions for you 100% and make those decisions for you. That is a serious decision to make in every day is a different decision.
sure,
And it's
sure.
one of those that if we can just give you a little food for thought, a little something else, share some of our experiences, maybe it'll help you in your journey in doing like what we said a little bit ago, training your children to be the best adults they can be when they get there.
Right.
And at this point, I think that's all I've got right now. It's one of those, it's a
It's a
heady
deep
topic and
subject.
we could delve into it even
Yeah,
more. But at
it
this
is a
point,
deep
we're just going to
subject.
drive people to drinking.
Yeah, it is a deep subject. Again, it's all about the family. It's all about men taking control of the household and directing it for the betterment of everybody in the household, including wives. We'll get into that, the struggles we've
Yeah.
had with our
Mhm.
relationships in another podcast. But that's my goal. Is I'm doing everything to make my children's lives easier by toughening them up.
Yeah. Try to learn from lessons from the past, prepare them for the future
For sure.
as best we can with what we got to work with.
Do that. Like you said,
So,
you're out there. You're not alone, right?
100%, brother. Hey, man, thank you so much for this. And it's all the dads and the moms out there, all the parents out there. We get it. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. It can seem very overwhelming. We 100% get it. Just do us a favor, keep your head up, and please remember, you are not alone. That'll be it for the Angry Dads podcast, right, brother?
You got it, man. We'll see you on the next one.
See ya.